1. I have quite a few memories from when I was younger that nobody else involved has any recollection of. Some of them being very simple, like sitting in the living room and my cat using my legs as hurdles as he made laps around the living room, and others much more significant that the others involved definitely should remember. I'll tell you 3 of these stories. I'll go in chronological order just to make it easier for me. The first one happened when I was about 4 years old. It was summertime to me, and all 3 of my sisters were home, but both of our parents were at work. My oldest sister was 16, second was 14, third was 10, and I was 4. I was napping on the couch with my Barney pillow that I had had since birth and couldn't sleep without. When I woke up, me and my sisters were all locked in my parents' bedroom, and I was laying on the bed without my pillow. I had no idea what was going on, so I asked my older sister, and she told me there was a group of strangers on our front porch, knocking, trying to get us to let them in, so we were hiding just for safety. My oldest sister decided to go out in the hallway to get the phone. During this time, I ran to the couch to get my Barney pillow. I saw the shadows of about 6 adults standing on our front porch. My sister called my dad. He came home from work and nobody was there. I am the only one out of all my sisters who remembers this. The second happened when I was 6. It was Halloween, and I was dressed as Tinkerbell. We lived in a super safe neighborhood, so my parents trusted my older sister, who was only 12, to take me trick-or-treating. Plus, a few of the other neighborhood children would be with us, and their parents, so my mom thought it would be safe. We went to all the houses, everyone we knew, and it was so nice. But then we got to this one house, and the guy who lived there wasn't really part of our community. He never reached out to any neighbors or anything, so we didn't know much about him. But his house was definitely decorated for the holiday. Me and 2 other kids walked up to the door and opened it, smoke pouring out of his house. We said trick or treat, and that was the point when he tried convincing us we needed to come into his house for candy. When we asked if he could just hand it to us, he said that wasn't allowed. He needed us to come inside so he could show us something. Very creepy. My sister grabbed my hand. The other kids' parents grabbed theirs and they took us away. Once again, my sister has no memory of this. The final story involves the same sister as the Halloween story. This involves me and my sister having different memories of when me and my best friend met. To preface this, I would like to say my best friend is my brother-in-law's younger sister. And we met because my sister and brother-in-law wanted us to meet, because they thought we would become good friends. Me and my best friend distinctly remember meeting when she was 11 and I was 9. I went to her house and we hung out and played an American Idol singing game for a few hours. Then, right before my mom picked me up, we danced to Thriller. We remember me being 9 because we remember me inviting her to my 10th birthday party. I also remember meeting my sister's at the time boyfriend over the phone, and in person at the house I lived in as a child, which we moved out of when I was 8. Meaning my sister would have been 14 and they had been dating for some time before I met him, and talked to him on the phone. However, my sister claims she didn't start dating him until she was 14. And we were already moved out of my childhood home and living with my grandmother already. She claims I didn't meet my best friend until I was 11 and she was 12, and the birthday I remember inviting her to is my 13th birthday party. My brother-in-law has the same memories as my sister. Do I just have a really terrible memory, or am I going insane? Or did I experience a glitch that no one else did? 2. I'd like to think I'm a very rational person. I've always been interested in science and math, and studying these fields has given me a more rational explanation for our universe. I stopped believing in God and an afterlife when I was 11, and turned to studying the universe and evolution and things of that nature. Something I have always been interested in was proposed ghost encounters. I usually debunk them, to matrixing of visuals or sounds. But some of it I can't give to that. The following story takes place less than a year ago. So I had a friend who was very interested in ghosts and stuff like that as well. He thought about it from a theological point of view, where I thought about it from a scientific point of view. We said we made the best team for that reason. My friend, who we will call Ron, had an uncle who died close to 4 years ago from suicide. One night we were driving around, I believe it was about midnight, and we decided to go to McDonald's. We pulled in and parked, and as we were getting out of the car, Ron freezes. I asked him what was wrong, and he pointed to the back of the parking lot, almost behind McDonald's. There was a black Ford F-150 sitting back there. The truck was, as far as we could tell, turned off. I didn't understand. I had never met his uncle and only knew that he drove a Ford truck, so I asked him to explain. That's the exact same truck Uncle John drove, and he killed himself behind a McDonald's. I looked back at the truck, and then realized that we were the only people in the parking lot aside from this truck. Ron began to step toward the truck, and in a split second, the truck's headlights came on, and it disappeared. Ron yelled for me to get into his car. We jumped back in and began to follow the truck. We followed it for close to half an hour down some back roads, and it disappeared at an intersection. Ron was frozen behind the wheel. You good, bro? I questioned him. Uncle John's grave is at that church. There was a church catty corner to us, and I didn't even recognize it until he mentioned it. I had been up there with him countless times. I asked what he wanted to do. I feel like I should go see him. I don't know why. So Ron pulled into the church and drove down toward the graveyard. We parked near the grave and got out. I told him I wanted to record this in case anything weird happened. He was fine with it. I began recording on my phone as we approached the grave. He started talking to his uncle, and I just looked around the graveyard. I remember being brought back to reality as I heard Ron say, Uncle John, can you give us a sign it was you? I didn't expect anything to happen, and at the time nothing did. After spending about 45 minutes there, I told him we should bail. I was starting to get freaked out. I'm night blind, so I have trouble seeing in the dark, and it was very dark. I asked if he wanted to listen, and we hopped back in his car. He turned it on, but it didn't start. I no longer have the recording, as it was on my iPhone 6s and I recently upgraded to the 7. In the recording, you can hear him talking, and when he asks for a sign, you can faintly hear the words, "Carry on, my son." The second to last word was very distorted. Ron became silent and started to cry. The son. "Carry On, My Wayward Son" by Kansas was his uncle's favorite song. We sat in the graveyard for probably another 10 minutes, while Ron regained his composure. When we decided to leave, he plugged his phone in to play music. The song started playing, and it was something by Black Sabbath. Just before we pulled out of the church, the music broke into static, and underneath the static you could hear, "Carry On, My Wayward Son." We stopped dead in our tracks as the song continued to play. I began to freak out and scream about what the fuck was happening. He didn't know, and he turned the car off. We sat there in silence for what seemed like an eternity, until deciding to head home. I can't explain this. It was the strangest thing I've ever encountered. 3. This happened when my son was still very young, 2 or 3 years old, and I was working a lot of evenings and weekends to pay the bills. My husband at the time was gone, a lot. When you get a call at 11 p.m. at night, you're tired, but the call is from a family member that is sick as hell, and asks you to bring them some flu meds and things. You grudgingly agree, noting that you're going to be driving 20 minutes to the store to get them, then 35 to 40 minutes to drop them off, so you can drive about 20 minutes to get home to your bed that was warm when you left it, and it's cold now. In this case, I did agree to, and luckily my little one was staying with Grandma overnight anyway, so I didn't have to bundle him up. It's kind of crappy weather. Snow on the ground, and I'm a little cold. But I'm driving along to do the big round trip with the radio cranked up, thinking I just need to not rush because I'll get there when I do. Don't want to hit ice and end up in the ditch or something. The store is nearly empty, just a couple of employees. I get the stuff, they ring it up, and the kid says, "Be careful, I heard it's going to get nasty out there." Or something like that. I'm thinking, it's winter. It's already a nasty trip. Down the road I go to their house, and I feel like I'm never going to get there, because it is getting slippery, and so I have to drive about 45 miles per hour to keep my truck on the road. I get to their house, and they answer the door with a puzzled look. "Holy crap, you got a license to fly?" I laughed it off and thought nothing of it as I headed home to get some sleep before my next shift. I drove home again, 45 miles per hour, taking my time because there is nobody going to be able to pull my truck out of the ditch if I end up there, and it was starting to snow lightly again. I finally get into my house, cussing because I'm going to have to shovel the driveway and sidewalk again. They are already buried in snow. I hang my coat and stomp off my boots and realize the TV is on. I don't remember leaving it on, and it's playing some old black and white movie. I felt really uneasy, like when the hair in the back of your neck stands up to warn you about something. If ever there was a moment I was completely creeped out, that was it. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, knowing that if there was someone in the house, it wasn't the husband, and I was on my own on this. I went through the house, room by room, turning on all the lights. I hear movement in my bedroom and flip on the light. There is no one there. I check everything again, still a little creeped out, and now I'm wide awake too, more cussing out loud. I decide to go make myself some coffee since I'm awake anyway. And there it is, already made, as in just brewed. I'm seriously tripping out at this point, alone in the house, and reach for the phone, looking around, and see the clock and drop the phone. The clock says 12:59 a.m. I thought I was imagining it, and turned up the TV, flipping through the channels. Sure enough, as I watched it turn over to 1 a.m. The whipped cream on this weird trip is that of course nobody remembered seeing me that night at the store or the family member that I brought the stuff to. I did still have the receipt, so I knew it happened. I never spoke of it again. 4. I'll try to organize this correctly. When I was 17, I'm 36 now, a group of friends and I went on an outing to a reportedly haunted and abandoned house in my hometown of Kirkland, Washington. I had been aware of its existence through the kind of local legend that always seems to travel through the youth population of any given town. The house was back in the trees off of a lightly populated section of road, and could not be seen unless you traveled up a dirt driveway. I would subsequently visit this place more times over the next year or so, even capturing some ghostly images a time or two, but it was this first visit that stuck with me. We set off in 2 cars to pick up some friends for this ghost hunt. My friend S starts telling a story about the house. In this story, the former owner of the house, who he named as Ben, went crazy and killed his woman. Ben in the story tried to keep the woman's body in the house, but it started decaying, and he ended up burying her in the yard, where she stayed for some time before the authorities caught up with him and brought him in. No one had lived there since. This was very believable, as it was quite an odd and run-down place. As this story is being told, we stop to pick up our last friend, A, and it dawns on me that, being a ghost hunt, we should have a recording device. A said that he had one and went back inside to get it. It was very much like the one Kevin used in Home Alone, and my friend grabbed a random recordable cassette tape from his room to use. He said there was probably stuff on it, but he didn't care and we'd just record over it. Upon arriving at the end of the driveway, we parked our cars and started heading up the path with flashlights. We stopped when one of the flashlights revealed an interesting development. In the middle of the path were 3 letters, which appears to be cut out of a for sale or beware of the dog type sign. They were arranged in order to spell Ben. This didn't scare me so much at the time, since I figured this Ben story was local legend and maybe some local teen had done this to be creepy. It did, however, seem to really creep out S, but he didn't say why until later that night. It turns out that he made up the Ben story, but didn't want to tell us until after everything developed. Anyway, we continued to the house. It was creepy and odd. It had an external staircase, which was the only way from one floor to the next. We turned on the audio recorder while we were there and took some pictures. Nothing really happened, but the place certainly did have that feel. Here's where it gets weirder and more synchronistic than even the Ben part. When we went back to listen to the recording, there did seem to be some odd whispering. Really hard to make out. And then the recording stopped and revealed what had previously been on the tape we recorded over. It seems that A at some point had dubbed himself a copy of Lies by Guns N' Roses. Our recording stopped and began playing the old recording exactly at the beginning of the second verse of Used to Love Her. I used to love her, but I had to kill her. I used to love her, but I had to kill her. I knew I'd miss her, so I had to keep her. She's buried right in my backyard. Yeah. 5. One of the weirdest things I have no explanation for happened when I was over at a friend's house when I lived in Maryland. I can only really describe it as a glitch. We were about 13 back when this happened in 2004. To understand my story, you kinda need to know the layout of her house. The house was 2 stories high, with the staircase facing the front entrance of the house. Her driveway came up to the side of her house, which is also where another entrance into the house was from the outside. Normally, her family would use this side entrance because it was more convenient. The side entrance from the house led into the kitchen, and to get to the stairs you'd have to turn left from the kitchen, which led to a side dining room. And the stairs were to the right, where you'd have to turn around to look up the staircase. At the top of the stairs you could either turn left, right, or straight into a bathroom. To the right was her parents' master bedroom, with its own personal bathroom. To the left was a short hallway, where the bedrooms were for her and her sister. Her bedroom door was the one at the end of the hallway, marked with a paper sign she had made with her name on it, hanging from some yarn attached to her door, with some tape or thumbtack, I don't remember which. Now my friend and I were really close. I would spend every weekend I could over at her house. She lived next to some woods and we would like to go off and explore the area together and look for snakes and other wildlife. Well, one weekend, just like any other, her mom picks me up from my house and takes me to hers. In the car, we planned on going up to her room so she could put on socks and sneakers, and then we were going to go out and play in the woods. Once we got into the house, she ran from the kitchen through the dining room and turned up the stairs. I said hi to her dad and older sister watching TV on the couch before following her path, but when I turned the corner and looked up the stairs, I saw her heel as she entered her parents' room. I walked up the stairs a bit faster, trying to catch up with her to see what she was doing. I got to the top of the stairs just in time to see and hear her door shut out of the corner of my eye. I turned immediately to the sound and saw the paper sign on her door swinging back and forth from the door shutting. I looked into her parents' room and didn't see anybody, so I figured I may have just been wrong and walked to her room. I opened the door and started saying her name, but the room was empty. Confused, I just sat down in her bed and tried to comprehend everything. After a minute, my friend comes into her room. "Where did you go?" I asked. "I went into my parents' room to use their bathroom," she said. I asked her why she didn't just use her bathroom, and she just shrugged. I explained to her what I saw as she was getting her socks from the dresser. When she paused, "You know," she started, "I have the memory of going both ways when I got to the top of the stairs." We stayed in her room for a while and talked more about it, not coming up with any conclusions. This may sound weird, but I know what I saw. I was thinking about this the other day, and thought I would share. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, number 43. No, you're not glitching yourself, this is actually a glitch video on a Wednesday. Now I know I promised you black-eyed kids for today, but there was a massive issue that cannot be resolved with that video, so even though the video had been made and uploaded, scheduled to go live, I only learned about this issue half an hour before it was meant to go live, so I had to remove the video. I can't allow it to be published. It was a matter of credit for stories, and some people, well, nobody had been contacted, and looking through, some of them actually can't be contacted because they're no longer active on the site where the stories came from. So I apologise about that. I will go through and try and get permission to use as many of the stories as I can. Maybe I can salvage something from it, and I might put a Black Eyes Kid video up at some point if I can get the stories. Short for that, I apologise. I know what it's like to be promised one thing and then delivered another. It leaves me struggling on a day I was meant to do 2 videos, which can take a while anyway. Having to do 3 videos, which is fine if I'm expecting to do it, but I'm recording ahead of time usually, you see, and I was essentially having to do the glitch video, which would have been for tomorrow, but I'm putting that up now. Obviously, you're listening to it, so I'd have something for today. I'm now going to have to try and get my next 2 days videos done after this is uploaded. So anyway, I apologise for the disappointment. It is what it is. I'm not crazy about it. I can imagine how you guys feel. But yeah, so I'm going to head off for now because lots of work to do. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and take very good care of yourselves.